When a 32-year-old billionaire dies and leaves his final wish to an 8-year-old poor girl, everyone expects a simple charity gesture. But as Emma stands before a hostile crowd at his funeral, reading words that will shake the foundations of wealth and privilege, a secret buried for years rises to the surface. What could possibly connect a powerful businessman to a child living in poverty? The answer will leave you breathless. Watch until the end to discover the truth that changed everything. If you love stories of unexpected justice and hidden connections, hit that like button and tell me in the comments. Have you ever witnessed a moment that completely changed your perspective on someone? Let's dive into Emma's story. The September rain hammered St. Catherine's Cathedral windows. Over 300 people filled mahogany pews, designer clothes creating refined mourning. At the front, a gleaming casket held Marcus Whitmore, Boston's youngest self-made billionaire, taken by cancer at 32. Victoria Whitmore sat front row, black Chanel dress pressed, expression composed. At 35, she had lived in her brother's shadow, watching him build an empire while she managed the family foundation. Now, everything would be hers. Marcus had no wife, no children. She was his only relative. Attorney Benjamin Crawford approached the pulpit. "Ladies and gentlemen, we honor Marcus Whitmore today. Before we proceed, I must honor an unusual request from the deceased." Victoria's eyebrows rose. "Mr. Whitmore's will specifies one person may read it publicly, someone he considered crucial." The crowd stirred. "Will Emma Mitchell please come forward?" Collective gasp. Near the back, a small figure stood. Emma Mitchell was 8, though looked younger. Blonde hair braided but cut at home, blue eyes wide with nervousness, simple navy dress mended at the hem, shoes polished but hand-me-downs, too large. As Emma walked down the aisle, whispers erupted. Boston's elite stared at this out-of-place child. Why would Marcus choose a poor child? Victoria's knuckles whitened, gripping her clutch. Her lawyers had reviewed everything. Emma's footsteps echoed against marble. She felt eyes boring into her. Her hands trembled, clutching the envelope Marcus had given her 2 weeks before death. "Keep this safe, Emma. You're braver than you think." At the pulpit, Emma used a step stool. The cathedral waited. She opened the envelope, pulled out cream pages covered in Marcus's handwriting. She glanced at Crawford, who nodded. Then she began reading. "My name is Marcus Whitmore. 6 months ago, I was given a diagnosis that would kill me within a year. In those dark moments, you question everything. I wondered if I had spent 32 years building an empire, but missing what truly mattered." The crowd leaned forward. "So I did something I had never done," Emma read, voice growing stronger. "I started walking through parts of Boston I had only seen from my car window. That's where I met Emma Mitchell, all eyes focused on the small girl. I found Emma on a Tuesday in October, sitting on library steps on Harrison Street. She was reading a high school physics textbook. She was 7 years old." Ripple of disbelief. I sat down and asked what she was reading. She looked at me with bright blue eyes and explained quantum entanglement in terms most of my MIT engineers would struggle to articulate. I was stunned. Here was a child with a gift that could change the world, sitting on library steps because her school didn't have books like this. Because her single mother worked 3 jobs to keep them in their 1-bedroom apartment. Victoria's heart pounded. I started meeting Emma twice weekly at that library. I brought her books, but more importantly, I talked with her about science, dreams, the future. Emma taught me that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the difference you make in someone's life when no one is watching. Emma's voice cracked, remembering those afternoons, the only bright spots in her difficult life. Marcus had seen her not as a poor kid to pity, but as a person worth knowing. "Emma doesn't know this yet," Emma read, tears streaming, "but her mother, Jennifer Mitchell, is dying. Stage 4 cancer, the same taking me. Jennifer has months at most. She hasn't told Emma because she's trying to arrange her daughter's care, trying to find family that doesn't exist." The cathedral fell silent. Some eyes glistened with sympathy, but Victoria's burned with fury. "I've watched Jennifer work herself to exhaustion, refusing help. But pride can't cure cancer, so I'm going to do something that makes sense of my 32 years on Earth." Emma paused. Crawford offered a tissue. To my sister Victoria, I leave $10 million, the family home in Beacon Hill and my art collection. You've always loved those things more than you loved me. Victoria's face flushed red. 10 million. This was an insult. The rest of my estate, Emma read, voice barely a whisper, including Whitmore Industries, my investment portfolio, and all remaining assets valued at approximately $800 million, I leave in trust for Emma Mitchell. The cathedral exploded. People shouted, gasped, jumped to their feet. Victoria stood so abruptly her chair toppled. 800 million to a child. But Emma kept reading. Emma will have full access to these resources for her education, care and future. The trust will be managed by a board I've carefully selected, including Benjamin Crawford and 2 trustees. Victoria is not among them. Crawford stepped forward. Please let the child finish. There's more to this story. Secrets even Emma doesn't know yet. For now, I want everyone to understand something crucial. Emma Mitchell isn't receiving this wealth because she's poor. She's receiving it because in 6 months of knowing her, she taught me more about integrity, curiosity, and pure human potential than 32 years among the wealthy elite ever did. Emma looked up, face streaked with tears, facing a divided crowd. She saw Victoria's face twisted with fury, but she also saw other faces touched by the story. There are 4 more pages, Crawford announced, but I suggest a brief recess. This is irregular, but Mr. Whitmore's wishes were explicit. Only Emma reads his will. As people stood, Emma remained at the pulpit, clutching remaining pages. She hadn't known about money. Now she was worth $800 million, and she had never felt more alone. Victoria pushed through the crowd, rage controlled. She reached Emma as Crawford moved protectively beside the child. "This isn't over," Victoria hissed. "That money belongs to real family, not some opportunistic child who manipulated a dying man." Emma looked up at Victoria, blue eyes meeting the older woman's cold gaze. Crawford placed a firm hand on Emma's shoulder. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'd suggest you speak with your attorneys. Marcus's will is ironclad." As Victoria stalked away, Emma heard her on her phone. "Get me Peterson and Associates. I need the best probate lawyers in Boston now." The cathedral slowly emptied, leaving Emma at the pulpit with Crawford. Through windows she could see the rain had stopped, sunlight breaking through clouds. She looked down at remaining pages. Whatever secrets Marcus had left, they had already changed her life forever. But she didn't know the biggest revelation was still to come. Emma took a deep breath, unaware the hardest part of her journey was just beginning. The recess felt like hours. Emma sat in a small room, Crawford beside her. Outside she could hear muffled roar of heated conversations. Boston's biggest will reading had taken an impossible turn. "Are you all right?" Crawford asked gently. "I don't understand," Emma whispered. "Why did Marcus give me all that money? I never asked for anything." Crawford smiled sadly. "That's exactly why. You valued him for who he was, not what he had. In Marcus's world, that was rare." A sharp knock. A woman entered, stern. "Mr. Crawford, Victoria's attorneys are here. They're demanding to review documentation." Crawford's jaw tightened. "Tell them they can review everything after the reading. Marcus's wishes were explicit. The entire will must be read publicly by Emma." The woman nodded and left. "I need to tell you something. The next sections contain information about your mother's illness. Marcus wanted you to hear it from his words first. Ready?" Emma's breath caught. She had noticed her mother growing thinner. "Is Mama dying?" Emma asked, voice small. Crawford's eyes filled with compassion. "She's very sick, Emma. But Marcus made provisions. The best doctors, the best care, everything that can be done will be done. You won't face this alone." Tears streamed down Emma's face. She had already lost Marcus. Now her mother, too. But she remembered something Marcus told her during their last meeting. "Emma, you have a strength most adults never find. When things get hard, remember that strength. You're going to face challenges that seem impossible. But you're not just surviving. You're going to thrive." She wiped her tears and stood straighter. "I'm ready." When they returned, the atmosphere had shifted. Word had spread. News vans pulled up outside. Inside, the crowd swelled with lawyers, financial advisors, opportunists. Victoria sat front row, flanked by 3 attorneys. Her face was composed, but her eyes burned with calculated fury. She had spent the recess assembling her strategy. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about family legacy, control, proving she was the rightful heir. Emma returned to the pulpit, pages clutched in her hands. The crowd settled. "Should I keep reading?" Emma asked Crawford. "Yes, take your time." Emma found her place. "I know many are shocked by my decision. Some think I lost my mind, that cancer clouded my judgment. But I want to be clear, I have never been more certain of anything in my life." The crowd leaned forward. "Emma Mitchell represents everything I hope to find." In our months together, I watched her tackle complex problems with creativity. I saw her treat the homeless man outside the library with the same respect she showed me. I witnessed her defend a classmate being bullied, even though it meant detention. I observed her share her lunch with hungry students, even when her own lunch was meager. Victoria shifted uncomfortably. Emma continued, voice strengthening. "But there's something else, something I discovered 3 weeks ago that changed everything about my family and my past." The cathedral fell into absolute silence. 25 years ago, Emma read, my father, Jonathan Whitmore, had an affair. He was married to my mother, Catherine, and they had 2 children, Victoria and myself. But for 6 months, Jonathan was involved with a woman named Sarah Chen, who worked at Whitmore Industries. Victoria's face went pale. The scandal that almost destroyed their family. How dare Marcus resurrect it? Sarah Chen became pregnant, Emma read, voice faltering. My father paid her to disappear and never reveal the child's paternity. Sarah moved to California, gave birth to a daughter. That daughter was given up for adoption when Sarah died in a car accident 2 years later. The crowd erupted in whispers. The adopted child, Emma read, hands shaking, was raised by a woman named Patricia Mitchell. Patricia never told the child about her biological mother. She raised her with love but struggled financially. That adopted child grew up and at 18 had a daughter of her own. That daughter's name was Emma Mitchell. The words echoed. Emma stopped reading, mind trying to process. Victoria stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. You're claiming this child is Jonathan Whitmore's granddaughter? Based on what evidence?" Crawford moved forward with a folder. "We have DNA evidence, verified by 3 independent laboratories. Emma Mitchell is indeed Jonathan Whitmore's biological granddaughter, which makes her your niece, Mrs. Whitmore." The cathedral exploded. Reporters shouted. Lawyers demanded documentation. This wasn't just about a will. This was about the Whitmore family tree, legitimacy, inheritance. Emma stood frozen. Her grandmother was Sarah Chen. "My mother," Emma whispered to Crawford. "Does she know?" "Marcus told her 3 weeks ago," Crawford replied gently. "She confirmed what DNA tests revealed. Your grandmother Patricia knew but never told your mother. She wanted to protect her from complications." Emma's mind raced. All those times her mother worked so hard, was it because she knew? Was she protecting Emma? Victoria was at the pulpit, face inches from Emma's, voice vicious. "You think being Jonathan's bastard granddaughter entitles you to my family's money? You're nothing. Your grandmother was a gold digger. Now you show up with your poor orphan act and steal what's mine." "That's enough," Crawford's voice boomed. "Mrs. Whitmore, step back or I'll have security remove you." 2 guards moved forward. Victoria retreated, face twisted with rage, but her eyes never left Emma. The message was clear. This is war. Emma felt like she couldn't breathe. She was a Whitmore. Marcus had been her uncle. Her whole life had just shifted. "There's more," Crawford said softly. "Do you want to continue?" Emma looked at remaining pages. Marcus had written this for her. "I'll read it," she whispered. The crowd settled. Emma picked up pages with trembling hands. "I know this revelation is shocking. I was shocked too when DNA tests confirmed my theory. You were not some random child, you were family." Tears streamed, but she kept reading. "I want you to understand why I kept meeting you, even after I knew. I could have given you money, done my duty from a distance, but I didn't want that. You see, Emma, you reminded me of who I was before wealth consumed everything. You had the same curiosity, the same fearless approach. And unlike Victoria, who saw my success as something she deserved, you saw me as just Marcus." Victoria's jaw clenched. This is why I'm leaving you the company and wealth. Not just because you're family, though that matters, but because you're the only person I trust to do something meaningful with it. You won't hoard it. You'll use it to ask questions, to learn, to maybe change the world. Emma's voice cracked, but she pushed forward. I know you're only 8. I know this seems overwhelming, but you have time to grow into this responsibility. The trust is structured so you'll have support, but ultimately the decisions will be yours. I believe in you. I believe you'll do something extraordinary. The cathedral was quiet. Many moved, despite shock. To those who question this decision, Emma read, I offer no apologies. My father's affair was wrong, and the way he abandoned Sarah Chen was unforgivable. But Emma is not responsible for decisions made before she was born. She deserves a chance her grandmother never got. This is not charity, this is justice, however delayed. Emma looked up. She could see emotions, skepticism, anger, sympathy, calculation. Crawford stepped forward. There's one final page. Emma, ready? Emma nodded. She looked down, Marcus's handwriting shakier here. One last thing. When you finish reading this, people are going to have a lot to say. Some will challenge you, some will try to use you, some will hate you. Remember this. Your worth is not determined by this money or this name. You are extraordinary because of your mind, your heart, and your courage. The wealth is just a tool. Use it well. Make me proud. And know that in my final months, you gave me something more valuable than all the money in the world. You gave me hope. Love, Uncle Marcus. Emma finished and looked up, tears streaming. Uncle Marcus, he had known those last weeks that he was her uncle, and he had still just been her friend. The cathedral erupted, but this time Emma barely heard. She was thinking about her mother, dying of the same disease. She was thinking about how her mother must have felt, discovering the truth, carrying that secret. And she was thinking about what came next. Because as she looked at Victoria's face, twisted with hatred, Emma understood with perfect clarity. The battle had just begun, and an 8-year-old girl was about to face enemies she couldn't imagine. Crawford touched her shoulder. Come on, Emma, you've done what Marcus asked. As Emma walked down, she passed Victoria. For just a moment their eyes met. In Victoria's gaze, Emma saw absolute determination to destroy her, no matter what it took. Emma was now an 8-year-old billionaire, a Whitmore by blood, and the target of a woman who would stop at nothing. The funeral was over. Emma's real test was just beginning. The days following the funeral passed in a blur of legal meetings, media frenzy, and sudden changes. The story exploded. Billionaire's secret grandchild inherits fortune. 8-year-old becomes youngest billionaire. Whitmore scandal revealed. Emma sat in the library of what was now her penthouse, a sprawling apartment in Boston's most exclusive building. She still couldn't believe it was hers. The library alone was bigger than the entire apartment she had shared with her mother, but Emma would have traded it all to have her mother back home. Jennifer Mitchell had collapsed the day after the funeral. She was now at Massachusetts General Hospital in a private suite, receiving treatments that cost more per day than she used to make in 6 months. Crawford had explained it all. The trust was paying for everything: her mother's care, nurses, experimental treatments, the best oncologists. Money could buy time. Whether enough time was still uncertain. Emma, you have visitors, said Mrs. Chen, the housekeeper Marcus had employed. She was a kind woman who had taken Emma under her wing. Emma looked up from the physics book she had been reading, trying to maintain normalcy. Who is it? The trustees, Mr. Crawford and the others. They said it's important. Emma's stomach tightened. Every meeting was important. She followed Mrs. Chen to Marcus's study, a room that looked like it belonged to a professor. Comfortable chairs, personal touches, photos. There was a photo of Emma and Marcus from their library meetings. She was laughing, face lit up. It hurt to look at now. Crawford was there along with 2 other trustees, Dr. Patricia Russo, a former MIT professor who ran an educational foundation, and James Chen, Mrs. Chen's son, a tech entrepreneur in his 40s. Marcus had chosen them carefully. Hello, Emma, Crawford said warmly. How are you holding up? I'm okay, Emma replied, though dark circles under her eyes told a different story. We have several things to discuss, Crawford continued, tone gentle but serious. First, your mother. The doctors are cautiously optimistic. The treatments are showing early positive results. It's too soon to know if it's enough, but there's hope. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. Hope. Something she hadn't dared to feel. Can I see her soon? Tomorrow. We've arranged for a car first thing. Now, other matters. Crawford exchanged glances with the other trustees. Emma, Victoria has filed a legal challenge to the will. She's claiming Marcus was unduly influenced, that you and your mother manipulated him, and that DNA evidence was fabricated. Emma's hands clenched. That's not true. We didn't even know he was rich at first. He was just Marcus, my friend. Dr. Russo leaned forward, dark eyes kind but concerned. We know that, Emma. And the evidence supports it completely. Marcus documented everything, every meeting, his reasons for decisions. He knew Victoria would challenge the will, so he prepared. But the legal battle will be difficult and public. Victoria has hired some of the most aggressive attorneys in the country. James Chen spoke up, voice measured. There's something else. Victoria is trying to paint a narrative in media. She's positioning herself as victim of a con artist, meaning your mother, and portraying you as an innocent child being used. But that's a lie, yes, James interrupted gently. But it's strategic. She's trying to generate public sympathy and pressure the courts. Some people are buying it. Social media is complicated. Some support you, seeing you as an underdog. Others see you as a gold digger's daughter who doesn't deserve the Whitmore fortune. Emma felt sick. She had overheard staff talking. The things people said without knowing her, it was overwhelming. What do we do? Emma asked, hating how small her voice sounded. Crawford pulled out a folder. We fight back with truth and transparency. Marcus left detailed documentation, security footage from the library showing your meetings, his personal journal describing growing certainty about DNA connection and his decision-making, financial records proving neither you nor your mother ever asked for or received money until after his death, witness statements from people who saw your relationship, including librarians, other patrons, even the homeless man you befriended outside. His name is Sam, Emma said quietly. He used to be a teacher before he lost his job and home. He's brilliant. He helped me understand some of the math I was struggling with. Dr. Russo smiled. That's exactly the kind of detail that matters, Emma. It shows who you are. Marcus saw that character in you. We need to help the world see it too. But I don't want to be famous, Emma protested. I just want my mom to get better. I want to go back to school. I want things to be normal. The three trustees exchanged sad looks. Crawford spoke gently. Emma, I'm sorry, but normal is not an option anymore. Whether you wanted this or not, you're now one of the wealthiest individuals in the country. That comes with responsibilities, attention, and yes, enemies. We're here to help you navigate it, but you need to understand the reality of your situation. Emma stood and walked to the window, looking out at the harbor. Boats moved peacefully, passengers unaware of turmoil in the life of the girl watching. She was 8 years old. She should be worried about homework and friendships. Instead, she was dealing with legal battles, media strategies, and people who hated her. What did Marcus want me to do? Emma asked, not turning around. Not with the money, but with all of this? There was a pause, then Dr. Russo spoke. Marcus left instructions for your education. He wanted you to have access to best resources, but also wanted you to stay grounded. He suggested a private tutor rather than elite boarding schools, at least for now. He wanted you to continue your relationship with the public library, with Sam and others who knew you before. He believed staying connected to real people, real problems, would keep you focused on what matters. Emma turned back. I want to keep seeing Sam. And I want to help him. He shouldn't be homeless. Marcus would want that too. James Chen smiled. Then, let's make it happen. We can set up a foundation in Marcus's name, focused on homelessness and education. It would be good use of resources and a positive media story. Show people what you want to do with this opportunity. But not just for media, Emma said firmly, surprising herself. For real help. Marcus taught me that wealth should solve problems, not just by comfort. Crawford nodded approvingly. Marcus chose well. You have his heart, Emma. His vision. That's what Victoria is really afraid of. Not that you'll waste the fortune, but that you'll use it better than she ever could. Over the next hour, they discussed practical matters. Security protocols for Emma's daily life. Schedule of tutors who would begin next week. Legal strategy for Victoria's challenge, and media guidelines about when and how Emma should make public appearances. It was exhausting. Emma's head spun with information and decisions no 8-year-old should make, but she listened carefully, asked questions when she didn't understand, and tried to absorb the crash course in wealth management and public relations. When the trustees finally left, Emma returned to the library and collapsed into one of the leather chairs. She pulled out her phone, a new expensive one the security team had given her, and looked at photos transferred from her old phone. There was one of her mother, taken 3 months ago before she got really sick. Jennifer was smiling, exhausted from another long shift at the diner, but smiling. Emma touched the screen gently, as if she could reach through and hold her mother's hand. Then there was the last photo of Marcus, taken on their final library meeting. He was thin, clearly ill, but his eyes were bright with warmth as he looked at Emma explaining something with animated hand gestures. Emma remembered that day. She had been telling him about an idea for using solar panels in new ways to power homes in poor neighborhoods. Marcus had listened like it was the most important thing in the world. "I miss you, Uncle Marcus," Emma whispered to the photo. "I wish you were here to tell me what to do. Everything is so complicated and I'm scared." As if in answer, her eyes landed on a book on the shelf, one Marcus had recommended months ago. She stood and pulled it out. Inside the cover, in Marcus's handwriting, was a note she hadn't noticed before. "Emma, by the time you read this, you'll know the truth. You'll probably be overwhelmed and frightened. But remember, I didn't choose you because of blood or obligation. I chose you because in a world full of people who wanted things from me, you only wanted to share ideas and sandwiches. That authenticity is your superpower. Don't lose it, no matter how much money you have or how complicated life becomes. Stay Emma. The world needs more people like you. Love, Mary." Tears streamed down Emma's face. She clutched the book to her chest and let herself cry, really cry, for the first time since the funeral. She cried for Marcus, for her mother, for the normal life she had lost, and for the overwhelming responsibility she now carried. But when the tears stopped, Emma felt something else emerging: determination. Marcus had believed in her. He had trusted her with his life's work. She couldn't let him down. She couldn't let Victoria destroy what Marcus had tried to build. She was 8 years old, yes, she was scared and overwhelmed and wished adults would handle all of this. But she was also Emma Mitchell, the girl who read physics textbooks for fun, who befriended homeless teachers, who saw possibilities where others saw problems, and she was a Whitmore, whether Victoria liked it or not. Emma wiped her eyes, straightened her shoulders, and walked to Marcus's desk. She pulled out a notebook and began to write, listing things she needed to learn, people she needed to understand, and goals she wanted to accomplish. The battle with Victoria would be long and painful. The media attention would be invasive and often cruel. The responsibility of managing such wealth would be daunting. But Emma Mitchell had survived poverty and uncertainty her whole life. She had watched her mother work 3 jobs and still find ways to smile. She had learned from Marcus that money was just a tool, and real wealth came from how you treated people when nothing was required of you. As the sun set over Boston Harbor, casting golden light across the library, Emma made herself a promise. She would honor Marcus's faith in her. She would help her mother fight for life. She would use this wealth to make a difference, not just for herself, but for others who struggled as she once had. And she would prove to Victoria, to the courts and to the world, that Marcus Whitmore had chosen wisely when he entrusted his empire to an 8-year-old girl with brilliant blue eyes and a genius mind who had once sat on library steps reading about quantum physics. The hard part was just beginning, but Emma was ready to face it. She had no choice. And somehow that made her stronger than she had ever imagined she could be. 3 weeks had passed since the funeral, and Emma's life had transformed into something unrecognizable. The penthouse that once felt impossibly large now felt like a gilded cage. Every morning she woke up in a bedroom bigger than her old apartment, surrounded by luxury she never asked for, feeling more alone than ever. Her mother remained at Massachusetts General Hospital. The experimental treatments were working, slowly, miraculously, but Jennifer was still too weak for visitors most days. When Emma could visit, she sat beside her mother's bed, holding her hand, neither of them speaking about the elephant in the room, the Whitmore connection, the fortune, the battle that Victoria was waging. Emma's education had begun with private tutors. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, no relation, was a brilliant educator who specialized in gifted children. She arrived each morning at 9, bringing lesson plans that challenged Emma's mind while respecting her need for normalcy. But even she couldn't hide the concerned looks when Emma seemed distant, her genius mind clearly preoccupied with adult problems no child should face. The legal battle was escalating. Victoria had filed multiple motions challenging the will. Her attorneys argued that Marcus had been mentally compromised by his illness, that the DNA evidence was somehow tainted, that Emma and Jennifer had engaged in elder abuse and manipulation. The accusations were vicious and baseless, but they were effective at generating media attention. Crawford had warned Emma that she might need to give a deposition. The thought terrified her. "Emma, we have a visitor today," Mrs. Chen announced one Tuesday morning, interrupting her physics lesson. "Someone who insisted on seeing you. Mr. Crawford approved it." Emma looked up, curious. Dr. Mitchell smiled encouragingly. "Take your time. We can continue after." The visitor was waiting in Marcus's study. Emma entered cautiously and stopped in her tracks. It was Sam, the homeless man from the library. But he looked different. Clean clothes, hair trimmed, face shaven. He looked like the teacher he used to be. "Sam." Emma's voice was small, uncertain. Sam stood, his weathered face breaking into a gentle smile. "Hello, Emma. I heard about everything that happened. I wanted to check on you, make sure you were okay. Your people found me at the library and offered to bring me here. I hope that's all right." Emma rushed forward and hugged him, surprising herself. Sam was one of the few connections to her old life, to the Emma who sat on library steps reading about physics, without the weight of billions on her shoulders. "I'm so glad you're here," Emma said, pulling back. "I wanted to find you, to help you, but everything's been so crazy." Sam sat down, gesturing for Emma to join him. "I know, kiddo. The whole world knows. You've become quite famous. How are you holding up?" "Really?" Emma felt tears prick her eyes. Everyone else asked how she was doing, but in ways that expected her to be strong, to be okay. Sam asked like he actually wanted to know the truth. "I'm scared," Emma admitted. "Everyone's fighting over me and the money. Victoria hates me. People I've never met say terrible things about my mom online. I have all this money, but I can't use it to make my mom better faster, or to make people stop being mean, or to go back to being just Emma." Sam listened, nodding. "That's a lot for anyone to carry, let alone an 8-year-old. Marcus would be proud of you, though." "You know that, right? How can you say that? I haven't done anything yet. I'm just surviving." "That's exactly why he'd be proud. You're surviving something that would break most adults. You're still Emma, kind, curious, thoughtful. The money hasn't changed who you are. That's rare." They talked for over an hour. Sam told her about the offer Crawford's team had made. Housing, job placement assistance, support to get back on his feet. Emma had been behind it, he knew, and he was grateful. But more than that, he wanted to make sure she understood something important. "Emma, money is a tool, but it's also a test. It tests your character, your values, what you really care about. Marcus gave you this test because he believed you'd pass it. Don't let Victoria or the media or anyone else make you forget why he chose you." After Sam left, Emma felt lighter. She returned to her lessons with renewed focus. That evening, Crawford arrived with news. "We have a court date set for the preliminary hearing on Victoria's challenge. It's in 2 weeks. The judge will review the evidence and determine if there's merit to her claims. Emma, you won't need to testify at this hearing, but you should be prepared. The media coverage will be intense." Emma nodded, trying to appear braver than she felt. "What happens if the judge agrees with Victoria?" "He won't," Crawford said firmly. "Marcus's documentation is impeccable, But even if the worst happened, we'd appeal. This could take years, Emma. Victoria is determined. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She wandered through the penthouse, eventually finding herself in Marcus's study. She sat at his desk, running her fingers over the wood, imagining him sitting here making the decisions that led to this moment. In the desk drawer, she found a journal she hadn't noticed before. It was leather-bound, expensive, with Marcus's initials embossed on the cover. She opened it carefully, feeling like she was intruding on something private. The first entry was dated 8 months ago, 2 months before Marcus met Emma. "I'm dying," the entry began. "The doctors confirmed it today. 6 to 12 months. I find myself thinking not about what I'll miss, but about what I've wasted. 32 years building wealth, but have I built anything that matters? Will anyone remember Marcus Whitmore for anything beyond his bank account?" Emma turned pages, reading Marcus's private thoughts, his fear, his regrets, his growing realization that success and meaning weren't the same thing. Then she found an entry dated 3 days after their first meeting. "I met someone today, a child, barely 7 years old, sitting on library steps reading about quantum physics like it was a comic book. When I asked about it, she explained concepts with such clarity and joy that I forgot I was talking to someone who should be worried about homework and recess. Her name is Emma Mitchell. There's something about her, a light, a curiosity, a genuine enthusiasm for understanding the world. I found myself wanting to talk to her again, not as charity, not as mentorship in the traditional sense, but because she reminded me of something I'd forgotten, the pure joy of learning for its own sake." Emma's eyes filled with tears as she read entry after entry, Marcus chronicling their meetings, his growing affection for her, his realization that she might be family. "The DNA results came back today," one entry read. "Emma is my niece, my father's granddaughter from the affair that nearly destroyed our family. I should be shocked, but instead, I feel something else. Peace. As if the universe has given me a chance to make right what my father made wrong. Victoria will never understand. She sees family as entitlement, but Emma sees people as people. That's why she's the one who should inherit everything I've built. Not because of blood, but because she'll do something meaningful with it." The final entry was written 3 days before he died. "I'm ready now. Ready to go, knowing that Emma will take everything I built and transform it into something better. She doesn't know it yet, but she's going to change the world. And I'll be watching, wherever I end up, proud that my last act on earth was believing in her. Victoria will fight this, she'll make it hard, but Emma is stronger than she knows. She survived poverty, watched her mother struggle and never lost her capacity for kindness and wonder. That's not weakness, that's the purest form of strength. Emma, if you're reading this, and I hope someday you do, remember, you're not just surviving, you're becoming, and I can't wait to see who you become." Emma closed the journal, crying openly now. She understood finally what Marcus had tried to do. It wasn't about the money. It was about giving her the tools to become the person she was meant to be, unhindered by the poverty that had constrained her mother and grandmother. It was about justice, yes, but also about possibility. She wiped her eyes and opened her notebook, the one where she'd been listing goals. She added a new entry: "Make Marcus proud, not by being perfect, but by being brave enough to try." The preliminary hearing was 2 weeks away. Victoria would be there with her army of lawyers. The media would be watching, the world would judge. But Emma Mitchell, 8 years old and suddenly responsible for a fortune she never wanted, was ready to face it. Because she wasn't just fighting for money, she was fighting for the right to honor Marcus's faith in her. And that was worth every battle ahead. The morning of the preliminary hearing, Emma woke before dawn. She had barely slept, her mind racing through worst-case scenarios. What if the judge believed Victoria? What if they took everything away? What if her mother died before Emma could prove that Marcus had been right to trust her? Mrs. Chen helped her dress in a simple navy suit that Crawford's team had selected. Professional but age-appropriate, meant to remind the court that Emma was just a child caught in an adult battle. Her blonde hair was neatly braided, and her blue eyes, usually so bright with curiosity, were shadowed with anxiety. "You look very grown up, Mrs. Chen said gently, straightening Emma's collar. "But remember, you don't have to be grown up today. You're 8 years old. Let the attorneys handle the legal stuff. You just need to be Emma." The courthouse was surrounded by media vans. Reporters shouted questions as Emma's car pulled up, security guards forming a protective barrier. Emma kept her eyes down, clutching Crawford's hand as they moved through the chaos. "Emma, did you manipulate Marcus Whitmore? Is it true your mother seduced a dying man? Do you think you deserve $800 million? The questions were cruel, designed to provoke a reaction. Crawford squeezed her hand reassuringly and leaned down to whisper, "Don't listen to them. They don't know you. They don't matter." Inside the courthouse, the atmosphere was tense. Victoria was already there with her legal team, 5 attorneys in expensive suits armed with briefcases and confidence. She looked at Emma with such cold hatred that Emma involuntarily stepped closer to Crawford. The courtroom was smaller than Emma had imagined from TV shows. Wood paneling, a judge's bench, rows of seats for observers. Every seat was filled. Media, legal analysts, curious members of the public who'd lined up for hours to witness the spectacle. Judge Rebecca Martinez entered, a stern woman in her 60s with steel-grey hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Everyone stood, then sat at her direction. "We're here today," Judge Martinez began, her voice cutting through the tension, "to address the preliminary motions in the matter of the Whitmore estate. I've reviewed the filings, Mrs. Whitmore's attorney, you may proceed." Victoria's lead attorney, a man named Richard Peterson, who reportedly charged $1,000 per hour, stood. He was smooth, confident, and utterly convincing as he outlined Victoria's case. "Your Honor, this case represents a tragic exploitation of a dying man. Marcus Whitmore, in his final months, was vulnerable, physically weak, emotionally compromised by his terminal diagnosis, susceptible to manipulation. Enter Emma Mitchell and her mother, Jennifer, who befriended Mr. Whitmore under false pretenses. They cultivated a relationship designed to exploit his vulnerability, ultimately convincing him to disinherit his own sister in favor of a child he barely knew. Peterson presented his arguments with theatrical flair. He questioned the timing of the DNA testing, conveniently conducted in Marcus's final weeks when he was too ill to think clearly. He questioned the documentation, all created by Marcus himself, with no outside verification of his mental state. He even questioned Emma's intelligence. Is it plausible that a 7-year-old could genuinely understand advanced physics, or was this an act designed to appeal to Marcus's intellectual vanity? Emma flinched at each accusation. Crawford had warned her this would be difficult, but hearing herself and her mother portrayed as con artists was devastating. Crawford stood for the defense. His approach was different, quieter, more methodical, but equally powerful. "Your Honor, the evidence tells a very different story. Marcus Whitmore was many things, but vulnerable and easily manipulated were not among them. He was a brilliant businessman who built an empire through strategic thinking and careful planning. His decision to leave his estate to Emma Mitchell was not impulsive. It was the culmination of months of careful consideration, extensive documentation, and yes, DNA testing that proved Emma was his biological niece." Crawford presented the evidence systematically. Security footage from the library showing Marcus and Emma's meetings, clearly showing Marcus engaged, animated, enjoying their conversations. Marcus's personal journal, filled with detailed observations about Emma's character and abilities written over months. Medical records showing that while Marcus was physically ill, his cognitive function remained intact until his final days. Financial records proving that neither Emma nor Jennifer had ever requested or received money from Marcus until after his death. "Most importantly, Your Honor," Crawford continued, "we have testimony from multiple witnesses who observed Marcus and Emma's relationship, librarians who watched them meet twice weekly, other patrons who witnessed their interactions, even the medical staff who cared for Marcus in his final weeks, who consistently reported that he was lucid, purposeful, and adamant about his decisions regarding his estate." The hearing continued for hours. Expert witnesses testified about Marcus's mental capacity. Financial analysts confirmed that the estate had been properly managed. DNA experts verified the test results. Emma was indeed Jonathan Whitmore's biological granddaughter, making her Marcus's niece. Through it all, Emma sat quietly beside Crawford, trying to appear calm even as her heart raced. She could feel Victoria's eyes on her, burning with resentment. She could hear the whispers from the gallery, people judging her, questioning whether an 8-year-old really deserved such wealth. During a brief recess, Crawford pulled Emma aside. "You're doing great. I know this is hard, but we're winning. The evidence is overwhelming in our favor." "Then why do I feel like I'm losing?" Emma asked, her voice small. "Because you have a good heart, and it hurts to hear people say terrible things about you and your mother. But remember what Marcus wrote in his journal. Your worth isn't determined by what others think. It's determined by who you are." When they returned to the courtroom, Judge Martinez called for final arguments. Peterson went first, painting Victoria as the victim of a cruel scheme, deprived of her rightful inheritance by manipulative strangers. Crawford countered with the simple truth. Marcus had made his decision based on months of careful observation and had documented his reasoning extensively. "This isn't about whether Emma Mitchell deserves $800 million, Crawford concluded. "This is about whether we respect Marcus Whitmore's right to distribute his own estate according to his wishes." He was sound of mind. He was thorough in his planning. He knew exactly what he was doing and why. To overturn his will would be to suggest we know better than he did what he wanted, and that's not how our legal system works. Judge Martinez listened to everything with an impassive expression that revealed nothing. When both sides had finished, she reviewed her notes for several long minutes. The courtroom held its collective breath. Finally, she looked up. "I've heard the arguments, reviewed the evidence, and considered the law, Mrs. Whitmore's attorneys have raised serious concerns, which is their right. However, after reviewing the extensive documentation provided by Mr. Whitmore himself, I find insufficient evidence to support the claim that he was unduly influenced or lacked capacity when he created his will." Victoria's face went white, then red with rage. Emma felt Crawford's hand squeeze her shoulder reassuringly. "The DNA evidence has been verified by multiple independent laboratories. The documentation of Mr. Whitmore's relationship with Emma Mitchell is extensive and corroborates his stated reasons for his testamentary decisions. His medical records show cognitive function remained intact. Most significantly, Mr. Whitmore clearly understood that his decisions would be controversial and took extraordinary steps to document his reasoning and ensure his wishes would be honored." Judge Martinez's gaze swept the courtroom. "This court respects Mr. Whitmore's right to distribute his estate as he saw fit. While the distribution may be unusual, unusual is not illegal. Therefore, I'm denying the motion to invalidate the will. Mrs. Whitmore, you may appeal this decision, but based on the evidence presented, I don't believe you'll be successful." The courtroom erupted. Media members rushed out to file their stories. Observers buzzed with reactions. Victoria stood abruptly, her chair clattering backward, and stormed out with her legal team trailing behind. Emma sat frozen, trying to process what had just happened. They'd won. The judge had ruled in their favor. Marcus's wishes would stand. "Emma," Crawford said gently, kneeling beside her chair, "it's over. You can breathe now." But even as relief washed over her, Emma knew it wasn't really over. Victoria would appeal. The media would continue dissecting every aspect of her life. The battle had just begun. Still, for this moment, she allowed herself to feel victorious. She'd faced down attorneys and judges and hostile questions. She'd stood up for Marcus's memory and her right to honor his faith in her. As they left the courthouse, Emma held her head high despite the cameras and shouting reporters. She thought about Marcus, about what he'd written in his journal, about his belief that she was strong enough to handle this. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was stronger than she knew. That evening, Emma visited her mother at the hospital. Jennifer was awake, propped up in bed, looking frailer than Emma liked, but with color returning to her cheeks. "I heard about the hearing," Jennifer said, reaching for Emma's hand. "Crawford called. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart." "Mama, why didn't you ever tell me about Grandmother Sarah, about the Whitmore family?" Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know until recently. My adoptive mother, your grandmother Patricia, never told me. She thought she was protecting me from a complicated past. When Marcus told me the truth, everything suddenly made sense. All those years of struggle, wondering why life was so hard, realizing we'd been robbed of resources that should have been ours. "Are you angry?" Jennifer considered this. I was. But then I watched how Marcus treated you, how he saw your potential and wanted to give you every opportunity we never had. And I realized anger doesn't change the past. But your future, that's something we can shape. You're going to do amazing things, Emma. I know it. They held hands in the quiet hospital room, mother and daughter, survivors of poverty now facing unimaginable wealth, both trying to navigate a world neither had prepared for. "I love you, Mama," Emma whispered. "I love you too, sweetheart, and so did Marcus. Don't ever forget that. He loved you enough to give you not just his fortune, but his belief that you'd use it to make the world better. That's the real gift." As Emma left the hospital that night, she understood that the preliminary hearing was just one battle. The war with Victoria would continue, the scrutiny would intensify. But she had her mother's love, Marcus's faith, and a team of people determined to help her succeed. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. 6 months had passed since the preliminary hearing. Victoria had filed an appeal as expected, but the appellate court had upheld Judge Martinez's decision. The legal battle was effectively over. Marcus's will would stand. Emma Mitchell, now 9 years old, was one of the wealthiest individuals in America. But wealth, Emma had learned, was complicated. The money sat in carefully managed trusts, overseen by Crawford and the other trustees. Emma couldn't simply spend it frivolously. Everything required approval, oversight, planning, which was fine with her. She didn't want toys or mansions or private jets. She wanted something else entirely. It started with Sam. True to her word, Emma had worked with the trustees to create the Marcus Whitmore Foundation for Education and Housing. Sam was their first success story, now living in a modest apartment, working part-time at a community college while completing his teaching recertification. But he wasn't the only one. The foundation had quietly helped dozens of homeless individuals, providing housing, job training, and support services. Emma's education had continued with private tutors, but she'd also insisted on something else: mentorship opportunities with students from underprivileged backgrounds. Twice a week, Emma met with small groups of kids from low-income neighborhoods, sharing her love of science and learning. The media had dubbed her the Billionaire tutor, but Emma didn't care about the headlines. She cared about the spark she saw in kids' eyes when they understood a difficult concept, the same spark Marcus must have seen in her. Jennifer had recovered, slowly, miraculously. The experimental treatments had worked. The cancer was in remission. She was weak, would need ongoing monitoring, but she was alive. She'd moved into the penthouse with Emma, though she insisted on working part-time at a non-profit, refusing to become a lady of leisure. "I need to feel useful," she told Emma. "The money is wonderful, but it doesn't define me, neither does being a Whitmore. I'm still Jenny Mitchell, and I still have value beyond a bank account." Victoria had finally retreated, bitter and defeated. She'd taken her $10 million and cut off all contact with Emma. The media had largely moved on to other stories, though Emma remained a figure of fascination, the child genius who'd inherited a fortune and was actually using it to help others. But on a cool October afternoon, almost exactly a year after Marcus's death, Emma stood at his grave. Crawford had driven her there, then given her privacy. She knelt beside the headstone, simple despite Marcus's wealth, exactly as he'd requested. "Uncle Marcus," Emma said softly, "I wanted to tell you what I've done with your gift. The foundation is helping people with real problems. Sam is teaching again. Mama is healthy. I'm learning so much, not just from tutors, but from the people we're helping. They teach me about resilience and hope and what really matters." The wind rustled through the cemetery trees, and Emma felt, absurdly, like Marcus was listening. "I know you said I was extraordinary, but I don't always feel that way. Sometimes I'm just scared and overwhelmed and wishing you were here to tell me what to do. But then I remember what you wrote in your journal, that I'm not just surviving, I'm becoming. And I'm trying, Uncle Marcus. I'm really trying to become someone you'd be proud of." She pulled out a small notebook, a replica of the one Marcus used to carry. Inside, she'd written her goals, her dreams, her plans for the foundation. She'd also written letters to Marcus, updating him on everything happening in her life. It seemed silly, writing to someone who couldn't read them, but it helped her feel connected to him. "I've been thinking about what you said about genius not caring about zip codes. I want to find more kids like me, brilliant minds trapped in poverty, full of potential but lacking opportunity. The foundation is going to create scholarships, after-school programs, mentorship networks. We're going to find those kids and give them what you gave me, a chance." Emma stood, brushing dirt from her knees. "Victoria still hates me. The media still writes complicated things about whether I deserve your money. Some people will never accept that you chose me, but I'm learning that I don't need everyone's acceptance. I just need to honor your faith in me. That's enough." As she turned to leave, she noticed someone else at the cemetery. A woman, probably in her 70s, standing at a nearby grave. The woman was watching Emma with an expression that seemed both sad and curious. "Excuse me," the woman called softly. "Are you Emma Mitchell?" Emma tensed, wondering if this was another reporter or critic. But something about the woman's tone was gentle, not hostile. "Yes, ma'am." The woman approached slowly, leaning on a cane. "I'm Catherine Whitmore, Marcus and Victoria's mother." Emma's breath caught. Catherine Whitmore, the woman whose husband had betrayed her with Emma's grandmother. The woman whose family had been torn apart by the affair that led to Emma's existence. "I don't want to intrude," Catherine continued, "but I've been coming here every week to visit Marcus's grave. I've seen you here before. I wanted to meet you, to tell you something that I should have said months ago." Emma waited, heart pounding. "I'm sorry," Catherine said simply. "I'm sorry for what my husband did to your grandmother. I'm sorry that Victoria has been so cruel to you. And most of all, I'm sorry that I didn't stand up for you sooner. When Marcus changed his will, I told myself it wasn't my place to get involved. But I should have supported his decision. He was right about you." Tears streamed down Emma's face. "You're not angry with me?" "Angry with you?" Catherine shook her head. "You're a child, Emma. None of this is your fault. You didn't choose to be born into this mess. But you've handled it with more grace than any adult in my family ever did. Marcus saw that. I see it too." Catherine reached out and gently took Emma's hand. "My son believed in you, and if he were here, he'd tell you that the best way to honor his memory isn't to be perfect. It's to be brave enough to try, to fail sometimes, to keep going anyway. That's what he did. That's what he knew you'd do." They stood together at Marcus's grave, two people connected by tragedy and blood and loss, finding unexpected comfort in each other's presence. "Would you like to have tea sometime?" Catherine asked. "I'd like to know you better, not as the girl who inherited Marcus's fortune, but as my granddaughter's daughter, as family." Emma nodded, unable to speak through her tears. Catherine squeezed her hand gently, then walked away, leaving Emma alone with Marcus's memory and a sense of peace she hadn't felt in months. That evening, Emma returned to the penthouse to find her mother waiting with news. The doctors had cleared her to return to light work. The cancer was still in remission. They were going to be okay. "Mama," Emma said, collapsing into her mother's arms, "I met Marcus's mother today. She called me family." Jennifer held her daughter close, both of them crying. They'd survived poverty, illness, public scrutiny, and Victoria's hatred. They'd lost Marcus but gained a fortune and a purpose. They'd been tested in ways neither had imagined possible, and they'd emerged stronger. "What do you want to do next?" Jennifer asked. "With the foundation, with school, with everything?" Emma pulled back, wiping her eyes. "I want to find kids like me, kids who are brilliant but trapped, kids who need someone to believe in them the way Marcus believed in me. I want to give them a chance to become who they're meant to be." Jennifer smiled through her tears. "Marcus chose well. You're going to change the world, sweetheart." That night, Emma stood at the window of Marcus's study, her study now, looking out at Boston Harbor. The city lights twinkled like stars, and somewhere out there were kids sitting on library steps reading books they loved, dreaming of futures that seemed impossible. Tomorrow, Emma would start searching for them. She'd use Marcus's fortune to open doors, to create opportunities, to prove that genius didn't care about zip codes, and neither should anyone else. The battle with Victoria was over. The legal challenges had been defeated. The scrutiny would continue, but Emma was learning to live with it. She was 9 years old, impossibly wealthy, and carrying a responsibility that most adults could never imagine. But she was also still Emma Mitchell, the girl who loved physics, who befriended homeless teachers, who believed that every person deserved a chance to shine. Marcus had given her that chance. Now it was her turn to give it to others. She pulled out her notebook and began to write, planning the next phase of the foundation's work. Outside, the city pulsed with life. Millions of people with millions of stories, some struggling, some thriving, all deserving of compassion and opportunity. Emma couldn't help everyone, but she could help some, and that was a start. "Thank you, Uncle Marcus," she whispered into the quiet room, "for everything. For seeing me when no one else did. For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. For teaching me that wealth is just a tool, and the real treasure is what you do with it." The hard part wasn't over. It might never be over. Being a Whitmore, being wealthy, being scrutinized, these would be permanent parts of her life now. But Emma was ready. She'd faced down lawyers and judges and hostile crowds. She'd survived grief and loss and hatred. She'd honored Marcus's memory by refusing to let his fortune change who she was at her core. And she was just getting started. As Emma finally headed to bed, she passed the photo of her and Marcus from their last library meeting. She touched the frame gently, remembering his warmth, his curiosity, his unwavering belief that she could handle anything. "I'm not just surviving anymore, Uncle Marcus," she said to the photo. "I'm becoming, just like you said I would. And I promise I'll make you proud." In the morning, the work would continue. The foundation would grow, more kids would be helped, more lives would be changed. But for tonight, Emma Mitchell, 9 years old, brilliant, brave, and impossibly wealthy, allowed herself to simply be a child who'd been loved by someone extraordinary. And that love, more than any fortune, was the real inheritance Marcus Whitmore had left behind.